we all are in relationships, whether it's romantic, friend, family, peer, teammate, and no relationship is going to be perfect, and that's not really what we strive to teach as a club. We actually try to make people see that there will always be some level of the two sides of healthy and unhealthy.
Hi, my name is Charlotte George, and welcome to the Make Today Well Lived podcast. Will you guys start by telling us a little bit about yourselves?
Hi, well, thanks for having us on, guys. I'm Cassidy Nash. I'm a senior at UCLA, and I'm the president of One Love at UCLA.
Hi, I'm Betsy Levine. I am also a senior at UCLA, and I am the VP of Administration at One Love.
Will you both share how you got involved in One Love?
Yeah, well, I can first start off by explaining a little bit about One Love is and who we are at UCLA. So One Love is a national 501c3 organization that spans across the entire country. It's super cool. They've educated over 3 million people. There are over 100,000 trained facilitators that lead workshops with high schools like yours and colleges like mine. And we're working every day to educate people on preventative steps of domestic abuse. So that's learning the healthy and unhealthy signs of a relationship. And what we do at UCLA is just one small part of that. So we're working to educate our campus and the greater UCLA community, like LA schools, stuff like that, on these 10 signs and how to mitigate domestic abuse and relationship abuse. So I got started my freshman year when a girl in our sorority kind of just sent a message about how she was starting this club. And the mission was obviously super cool and resonated really deeply with me. So I guess for the last 4 years, I've just been getting more and more involved ever since.
Yeah, so I have a similar story to Cassidy. I got involved the same year, freshman year, when we were initially introduced to One Love. It was an organization that I hadn't heard of until Tiki Feldman and Chloe Christensen created the club at UCLA. And its mission, I realized, was something that I had never really learned about or talked about in a more academically, stimulating setting, where domestic violence and relationship abuse was something that I would mostly see, in pop culture references, but never something that was really talked about between me or my peers in a more serious manner, and quickly realized after joining the club that it was something that I felt was really important to be talking about. And, breaking the stigma surrounding relationship abuse is something that One Love really brings to light, because relationship abuse is fueled in silence. So being a part of One Love all 4 years of college and then eventually becoming a part of the exec board has been one of my greatest accomplishments at UCLA.
So we talked a little bit about unhealthy and healthy relationships. What exactly is an unhealthy or toxic relationship?
The question of if a relationship is healthy or toxic is obviously kind of a weighted question. It has a little bit of an undefined boundary, and I think that's why they're so hard to classify, because we all are in relationships, whether it's romantic, friend, family, peer, teammate, and no relationship is going to be perfect, and that's not really what we strive to teach as a club. We actually try to make people see that there will always be some level of the two sides of healthy and unhealthy. But what One Love does a really good job of is educate people on the 10 signs. So I wish that I had brought a card with me, but these 10 signs of an unhealthy relationship are guilting, isolation, possessiveness, intensity, sabotage, betrayal, manipulation, and a couple others that kind of just all stem within that. And when relationships cross the line of the cycle of abuse versus just a singular instance of some sort of unhealthy behavior, and you start to learn that having healthy conflict and having conversations to try to mitigate that behavior isn't working, I think that that's when it does cross that line into a relationship that maybe should end or maybe should be taken a little bit of a step away from. But yeah, all relationships I feel like can have some level of healthiness and unhealthiness. I mean, even if a relationship is super toxic, you wouldn't stay with the person if there weren't those fun memories or healthy signs that kind of keep bringing you back into that cycle of, oh, maybe they've changed and they won't do it again. But yeah, I don't know.
Yeah. Just kind of going off of that, during our meetings, one of my favorite activities that we do is looking at pop culture references, whether that's like from movies or TV shows or like even songs that have to do with relationships. And, we'll pull up an example that seems pretty black and white in terms of either it's healthy or unhealthy. So like, in one of our last meetings, like we had like a Euphoria reference where, in the scene, it seemed like almost exactly what a toxic relationship would look like. So, but Cassidy encouraged us all to then also like remember that these relationships aren't black and white, and to also then like try to find the good signs in those references. So showing that, like, as she was just saying, that it's very fluid in terms of like what makes a relationship healthy or unhealthy, but it's kind of in terms of like the severity and like the timeline of everything, and it's definitely like a relationship to relationship basis in terms of like what will make a relationship unhealthy to the point of complete decay.
Talking a little bit more about the differences, how do you think someone can tell the difference between a rough patch in a relationship and an overall toxic dynamic?
This is a really good question, and something that I have thought about a lot during my time at One Love, because, starting out in this club, that was like a big question that stuck in my mind, where I, personally, but then also like just in my life, have seen relationships. And again, like, these relationships don't have to be intimate relationships. It can also be between friends, coworkers, peers, family members, and trying to figure out what that balance is. One of my favorite signs, as Cassidy has been saying, we have 10 unhealthy and 10 healthy signs. One of my favorite healthy signs is healthy conflict, which is one of my favorite signs, and I think is something that can be easily overlooked. And I think that the way that communication is key in any relationship, and the way that you can, healthily communicate with your partner, your friend, your family member, issues that you have within a relationship, is something that I think is really important in terms of like the turn between a healthy and unhealthy relationship, where like if you're able to have that open and honest communication with someone and like work through the issues that you're having, instead of like leading it into more of like a toxic situation where you see more of the unhealthy signs of like guilting and belittling and isolation, like all of those behaviors that will come up without the communication that makes it healthy, I think is really important to keep in mind.
Yeah, I mean, exactly what Betsy was saying, and I think a really important distinction to make is the repetitive behaviors. Mm-hmm. So seeing those signs over and over again doesn't have to be in a row, kind of like that cycle of abuse that I had mentioned before. You notice the healthy behavior, there's some sort of intensity associated with that, so you kind of get upset at the person and start thinking about wanting to end it, and then they win back your trust again by an act of service or promising that they'll never do it again, or some manipulative tactic to make you think that the behavior won't happen again. So then you go back to a peaceful state, you remember the relationship, you do damage control over all of the people you talk to, complaining about this person, telling them that you worked it out and that they're going to change, and it's only time until it happens again. And I think that the issue with this cycle, and that makes it hard to distinguish between a rough patch and a truly toxic relationship, is that because it's a cycle, you build up a sort of tolerance to the behavior, and it becomes harder and harder to notice when things are happening that are abnormal, because you're spending so much time with this person that you've kind of isolated yourself into thinking that their behavior is normal and that they're it's not as severe as it might seem to friends from an outside perspective. So it's kind of like a touchy subject, and why in our club we try to emphasize the importance of when you do have these conversations with loved ones, when you see them in one of these rigorous cycles or in an unhealthy relationship or in domestic violence, that you have to kind of enter in as a like loving point of view, and you don't want to just start attacking your friend, because it's so easy for us to say, oh, I would never stay in that relationship, like that would never be me. And you tell yourself that until you realize that either it's you in the relationship or it's a really close friend that needs love and support to finally acknowledge what's happening to them, instead of just taking the easy way out and being like, oh, they suck, like don't stay with them, look at what they're doing to you. It's like, oh, I've noticed you've been really stressed or you've been really sad lately, like how's everything going, are you okay? And I think just those like emotional words can almost like drop like a wall or a curtain that someone might have put up on how they actually are doing, and be like, oh shoot, like they've noticed that I'm sad, like is this actually becoming a problem? So yeah.
Hi, I'm Dia Tilley. I'm also a peer counselor here at Norman Aid. Thank you for being here with us. So my first question is, what advice would you give to students who want to foster healthier relationships in their lives?
I think that one that Cassidy and I have talked about this a lot, that we feel gets overlooked is fun, and is my favorite healthy sign, besides healthy conflict. I think that it's one that gets overlooked a lot in terms of, once you're in a long-term relationship, speaking in terms of either intimate or friendships or family relationships. But, these are relationships that can get intense pretty quickly. And just remembering that having fun with someone, shouldn't be overlooked. It's something that like stays really important throughout a relationship. And being able to have a balance, I think, is the most important thing between, intensity and like getting really deep with someone, but then also still having fun and like having, your time together feeling light, is something that I think should, stay really important.
Yeah, definitely. And we talked about this in our meeting a couple of weeks ago, but especially in a college environment where we're coming from, there are so many opportunities for fun. And they're everywhere during the day, during the night. But one thing that we try to say is that you want to have fun without like substances or without relying on other people. So it's like you have fun in those settings, of course, and you want to like go out or like hang out at night and be with other people, but you also feel comfortable and like you want to have fun with this person one-on-one, and you don't rely on other people or other things to kind of facilitate that lighthearted, healthy relationship. I think that every relationship obviously looks different, and it's hard to set just like a threshold or a set number of characteristics that you have to be in a healthy relationship, because it's intuitive. Like, if you don't have to walk on eggshells around a person, or if you feel comfortable telling them something that might be a little bit vulnerable, that they won't maybe in the future use that against you. I think that those are all things that should feel easy almost, and not like you're having to put in a lot of effort or to frame stories in a certain way that might make your partner or your person accept them more or not judge you for them, because it's really hard to have relationships where you feel judged all the time. So we always just say that like everyone deserves healthy love, and there's always a way to love better, and that comes from an active side of you having healthy conflict and taking responsibility for things that you need in a relationship, but that also comes from your partner putting in the work as well, and making it more of like an equitable relationship where you're not just sending every first text or planning every date. It needs to feel like both sides are giving equal amounts of effort. That doesn't mean it has to be the same forms of effort. Like if you like planning dates, go for it, plan everything, but maybe then they show random acts of kindness or something. You feel like both sides are putting in same amounts of effort across the board, from wherever it may come from.
I love that, because it's usually the most basic things that are overlooked in relationships, like having fun. And so going back, if someone's friend is in a healthy relationship, how can they be supportive of it? Like, what are some basic or hard things that they could do to support a friend?
That's a great question. And I think one that is one of the ways that One Love can actually like tell you something to do. Whereas with a lot of the other things, it's more of like relationships are case by case basis. But with helping a friend, we try to tell people to use I statements in speaking to their friends about a healthy relationship. So, for example, Betsy was talking about euphoria before. So we see Nate and Cassie have this super quick-paced, high-intensity, very volatile relationship where Nate kind of love bombs Cassie constantly throughout the show. So we see Nate get really mad at her and then say, I love you, and it's just a constant cycle. So as a friend, if I'm Cassie's friend, I could approach her maybe and say, like, hey, Cass, like, I've noticed you seem super stressed at school and you're not really yourself. Like, is everything okay? Kind of just pointing out things that you've noticed in Cassie's life that could be stemming from this abusive cycle. And I think refraining from saying, like, Nate sucks, like, he's the worst, because Cassie's clearly in love with him as well. And while Nate might be super intense and being honestly awful to him, she has feelings of love for him. So breaking down someone that someone else loves can almost just like create distance between the friendship and maybe make it harder for you to step in again. And maybe if you actually do see her crying one time, be a rock for her, because she might avoid you because she's nervous that you might just break Nate down, which she doesn't want to hear. I think one other thing that we try to say is to focus on behaviors rather than the person. So being like, oh, like, I've noticed that you've canceled a lot of our plans recently. Like, is everything okay? Like, I miss you. I want to spend time with you. I want to see you. In an isolation or in like a relationship that's kind of more isolating, or if the person's being possessive, a lot of the times that can mean that you have to break a lot of ties with people. You are spending less time with your friends. You're not being able to live your own life. So I think saying like behaviors that you've noticed that are also like affecting you is really like a good thing to say, because your friend, and if you're in an unhealthy relationship, like the last thing you want to do is hurt your friends that are like the people you still think you have left. So yeah, I feel like that are the good things to like say and ways to go about it.
Yeah, just going off of that, I think, you know, a lot of what Cassidy was saying is like coming to these conversations with just so much love for the person, and acknowledging that this is a conversation that's going to be really hard to have. But, you know, using the I statements, like talking about the behaviors and coming to it with love, I think, you know, also knowing that these might be conversations that have to be had like over a period of time. So like not having any expectations for immediate effects right after, and as the friend not getting like, you know, it can be frustrating to see someone that you love getting hurt like again and again, you know, which is what usually happens in these abusive cycles. But remembering that your friends are, you know, in this relationship for a reason, you know, it started for a reason, and usually that's because like there are pieces of healthy signs still there. And, you know, relationships exist on love, but then they also exist on like so many other factors. So I think that coming to these conversations, having all of that kind of in your back pocket, which is what a lot of One Love does to, you know, within their education, that's what a lot of One Love does. And especially for young adults and college students, I think that it's something that's really important because, you know, we're, especially in college, like living in such tight quarters with so many people, and you know, it's a space where you can be with someone that you're dating 100% of your time, which can make these conversations even harder to have. So I think that having all of those things and tools like in your back pocket coming to these conversations, and then also knowing, like, just kind of being there for someone, even if it's something that they might not be willing to talk about just yet, but making yourself available for when they are is something that's really important. So like once they feel ready, or, you know, have kind of come to terms with any of what they're dealing with, that you could be the first person that they come to.
I think that's so important because you don't want to add more stress onto their lives. They already have some. You want to be there to show them love and support and not make them more angry or like so that they think they can't come to you anymore. So my other question is, how can students get involved with the One Love Foundation and make a difference?
People can get involved with One Love in a variety of ways. One Love is a national foundation, as I was talking about before, so they have a pretty robust website. It's joinonelove.org. You can look there for resources. They have a super built out education center where anyone can make an account. It's free. And there are a ton of like resources and materials that you can look at if you're curious yourself on, oh, maybe I want to like refresh myself on the 10 signs that Cassie and Betsy are talking about, or I want to watch a video to try and reinforce my knowledge of what the 10 signs are and how to spot them. But I think the best way to get involved is to start or join a One Love club or chapter. So Tiki, the founder and old president that Betsy was talking about before, started the One Love Club just 4 years ago at UCLA, and it's grown just exponentially since then. And last year we educated like 1,500 people in the LA area and at UCLA. So I feel like not being nervous to take the steps to start the club is definitely like a good place to start. And they have a ton of resources and people that can help you start a chapter at your high school or at your college, wherever you may be going if you're a senior. So I think that those are the best ways. And then also just to like follow the Instagram. So Join One Love has an Instagram, and then One Love UCLA has an Instagram where we constantly are posting like events and resources and 10 signs and just other sorts of supplemental materials that can help you just continue to refresh your memory with what healthy and unhealthy relationships look like.
Yeah. I also think that a facet of One Love that we haven't really touched on yet is that once a member, you can also then become a facilitator. So One Love will actually educate you to then be able to educate another community. So some of the materials that Cassidy was talking about and that we've touched on a little bit is One Love has created like full workshops that include like videos from I think like 1 minute to like 10 minutes long, where they're like fully produced and scripted.
Like 90-minute long ones.
Yeah,
like
they're
super long.
They have like a bunch of them where it shows usually a couple or friends, and it kind of takes you through their relationship, and at the end it has like already a bunch of questions that are laid out for facilitators. So then once you get trained, you then can, at least at UCLA, what we do is then we combine with like either another club, a sorority. We've done like dorms or high schools, middle schools. You can like then take these materials and then present these videos to whatever community that you're at, and then facilitate discussions. So I think that that's one of like my favorite ways to get involved with One Love, and like what I started to do pretty quickly after joining, because then you get to have actually like facilitate the discussions that you're learning about during meetings. So if you guys go off to college or if you start a chapter here at Beverly High, I think that becoming a facilitator and really utilizing the materials that Cassidy and I have been talking about is just such a great way to become involved with One Love, because they are really well done. And
I think it's great to know how accessible these resources are, or if a kid wants to start a club here, I think it's great. And so with my last question, I wanted to ask, what are the long-term effects of staying in a toxic relationship?
It's hard to define what those effects could be. We see in relationships that are isolating that you might start to break off ties with family, with friends, your partner, if they're being manipulative or guilting you into thinking that people in your life that aren't necessarily connected to them but are connected to you might be doing you harm or causing you stress, or say you're crying one day and it might be because of this person. But when you do have a relationship that is long-term and intimate, it's a lot easier for them to blame other people other than them. So I think starting to lose connections is one of the biggest effects. And another unhealthy side we see is sabotage. So sabotage can come in a plethora of ways, but I think one of the most prominent ones is by sabotaging things that are important to you. So career, sports, education, maybe guilting you into spending more time with them, to skip practice or skip class, or to not do something to the extent that you want to start to see your own like passions and or aspirations start to fleet is definitely like one that is really hard to see in the moment, but one that is very much so prominent in retrospect to understand what has really happened and what the effects of the relationship have been. I think lastly is just confidence and feeling like you're out of control in a relationship when somebody is treating you poorly and making you feel like you can't stick up for yourself and that you're not worthy of healthy love, which is really just a sad feeling. I think all of these effects can be rebuilt and through a support system and through kind of rebuilding friendships. None of them are long-term or completely detrimental to your life, but definitely hard to see in the moment.
Before we wrap up, is there anything else you both want to add that we like haven't touched upon yet?
Yeah, I think that one thing that Betsy and I definitely wanted to mention while we were here is the last aspect of what we teach in the One Love curriculum, which is how to safely navigate an ending of a relationship. Mm-hmm. So a lot of times this is referencing a breakup with an intimate partner. So we have the 3 Ps for who you should talk to. So that's peer, parent, professional. So any of those are great assets for you if you feel like you are in an unhealthy relationship, and if you do feel like you might be in some sort of danger, whether it's emotional danger or physical danger, if you were to end this relationship. I think especially as you get older, relationships become much more complicated and deep because you can be financially tied to someone, you can live with them, you can have your location shared. There can be other sorts of your life that don't feel like are necessarily just like easily split off or easily like able to be split off from. So talking to someone else and kind of working through your ideas and making a plan is really important. It can be a lot easier to kind of just like immediately end a relationship if you've had it up to here and you just want it to end and you want to be impulsive in the moment when you're in a fight. But what we try to teach is that you can have the fight and of course like maybe ask for space or take a break, but for successfully navigating an ending of a relationship, coming into it with a plan and with time spent on how you want to do it and what the breakup should look like is definitely like a much safer and healthier way to do it. And also to hold that breakup if it does feel kind of like it's more of an abusive or could end violently, to do it in a public place so that you have bystanders who might add that social pressure of the person to not act out or to not be violent with you, because obviously that would be a very extreme case to do in something like, say, a coffee shop. So to definitely like talk to someone before, make a plan, do it in a public place, and I guess try your hardest to have that like real ending. I think the repetitive endings can be really, really difficult because it almost puts you back into that cycle where it's like, oh, you know what, we broke up 2 weeks ago, like we'll get back together soon. Having the time spent on like why your relationship should end and even writing it down, I think can be really helpful, just so you can like self-reference it and be like, these are the reasons why we're breaking up, and nothing should change my mind about any of these things. I don't know.
Yeah. I think that Cassidy did a great job of explaining what we talk about a lot, because, you know, these abusive relationships exist within these cycles. Yeah. And a lot of what we learn about is, you know, the ways that people can get kind of roped back in, because it's just so easy to see from the outside, as we've said, like in an abusive relationship, to be an outsider and say like, I just don't understand why you would stay. Yeah. But there are just so like a plethora of reasons that do differ from relationship to relationship. So you know, there is a TED Talk, I can't remember her name right now, that we'll share with you guys, who discusses her own experience in an abusive relationship. And, you know, I think that hearing from someone who has gone through it, and then hearing also about like how she went through her breakup, you know, it has been just like very moving in terms of like my relationship with One Love, because also, again, like we are 22 years old, like we are just kind of like starting to enter into like real adult life. And, you know, that's when these relationships get that much more complicated, because as she was saying, like, you know, you have financial ties, you might have like kids or like a pet, or, you know, live together. Like there are just so many reasons.
Even just the time you've invested into the relationship, it can feel like such a like, you've invested so much time, it can almost feel like easier to just stay in the relationship than it would be to break up, because you're like, we've been together for 2 years, like I can get past this, like it's gonna be so hard for me to like break up with this person and go through the emotional battle it is to like rebuild your confidence and like rebuild your friend circles if you did lose a lot of that stuff. But you really just have to come back to like, I deserve healthier love, and like this is my life, and like I've invested 2 years into this, and I've got 20, 30, 40, 50, 100 left. Like my happiness is the most important thing here, and like it's not found here.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I think it like just like a bottom line is that relationship abuse is something that thrives in silence. So like trying to break the stigma of that, you know, it can exist in so many different ways. So not, you know, trying to put it in a box. And if you are feeling like you need help, or if you know, just want to talk to someone, or if you're a friend that's noticing something, you know, just like coming to conversations with love, support, honesty, using I statements, talking about behaviors is just something to remember. And yeah, everybody deserves healthy love.
Everyone deserves it. Love better.
We would like to thank our generous sponsors and partners, Michael J. LeBeau, Norman Aid Peer Counselors, KBEV, and of course, we'd like to thank our listeners. Stay safe and make today well lived.